Hello everyone, my name is Boulevard and this complicated looking messy sheet in front of me is a breakdown of the America's Awakening seasonal tournament. Here on the side we have the players color coded by their Swiss record 9-0, 8-1, 7-2. We have all of their Swiss lists broken down. This column here in the center represents how many decks they swapped from their Swiss portion to their top 32, and then here we have the actual breakdown by numbers. Also alongside it we have the regional breakdown as well as a breakdown of all of the Namis, what they were paired with in Swiss. I didn't do one of those or Top Cut. Now, quite a few records were broken at that seasonal. The first one obviously being highest deck representation that we've ever had. Nami, Ionia taking 29 of the top 32 spots out of the Swiss portion. The highest previously was actually the last seasonal with Kaisa at 24. Blew that out of the water and even managed to keep it up in Top Cut. We got a new record for highest regional representation at 57. Ionia at 51 was tied with Shadow Isle in one of the very early seasonals. And the thing that makes this that much more impressive that Ionia broke the record is that when Shadow Isle was at 51 in a seasonal, I believe it was actually... I think it was Empires of the Ascendant. So like Shurima had just come out. We didn't have Runeterra. We didn't have Bandle City. So you were forced to play, more of every region. We didn't even have as many columns to put things in. So the fact that we blew that out of the water, incredible. Freljord just continuing to We've had quite a few seasonals with only one Freljord deck. The only time that Freljord is prevalent is at a seasonal has been when Thralls is good. Otherwise, we constantly get Freljord just hanging on by the shred of one Plunder player, which is what it was again this time. Another record that was broken, Floppy Mudkip and P-Tash's Annie Jin only played 4 spells. Definitely the least amount of spells we've ever had in a Top Cut deck. Now on to the predictions, what I talked about for the seasonal, what I got right, what I got wrong. Nami, I had predicted less than 20. And I just want to kind of throw out there, this spread is a lot more of what I originally anticipated most seasonals should be looking like. And then as time went on, and this is kind of what things will look like in a paper card game. In a digital card game, and of course there's 3 decks, so things are a little bit different, but not wildly different. I felt like most things should be, okay, yeah, the best deck, most people in the top 32 should be playing the best deck, and I just constantly found myself being wrong about that, players not liking it, or just having this aversion to playing the 3 strongest decks, they want to counter it, whatever, and so the numbers always got more spread out, and I got accustomed to sort of predicting a wider spread based on how the seasonals had gone in the past. What happened here, though, was, this is a stacked top 32. There have been top 32s that we've had where I only recognize 18 or 19 of the names. Here, I recognize 29 of these players. And it was something that I talked about a little bit earlier on in the Tournament Tactician where I couldn't articulate how much Nami and Akshan Lee Sin split we were going to see because I knew that a lot of good players were going to be on this. But again, it's not always 32, 29 plus good players making it to the top 32. Usually it's only 20 or so. So I think this is a higher concentration of the best deck based on a higher concentration of top players in Top Cut. So I don't know that this is even necessarily a Nami thing as much as it is just this is what the good players, everybody took this very seriously because it's the last seasonal before Worlds. Top 8 will get you into Worlds instead of top 4, so it's a little bit easier on that end. And I think it was just the amalgamation of a lot of things. I don't think this was just all Nami pulling all of the weight in terms of the numbers here. But again, I was very wrong on it. I thought it would only be 20. I thought a lot more players were going to come to try and counter it. Fiora Pantheon, I wasn't too far off. I predicted somewhere in the 14 to 17 range, I believe is what I gave myself. And I didn't really expect it to fall off as hard as it did into the top 32, if I'm being honest. I don't think that's a prediction I threw out there, but I thought it might go down a little bit, but definitely not this much, because I know a lot of players were talking about sort of picking on the Demacia decks in top 32 that were coming out to pick on the Nami decks and all that kind of stuff. One thing I did get right here was Yasuo. I took a risk. I put it in tier 2 on the tier list alongside a bunch of other decks that didn't make it. And while it wasn't, the highest performing Swiss list, a lot of people did run into it as a counter pick in the top 32. So I was pretty happy with the play rate of Yasuo and the fact that I was able to help put some people onto that. I'm not going to take credit for anyone in the top 32 playing it based off of what I said, but hopefully the information was helpful to you guys. And then, yeah, the big fall off actually happened earlier than I thought. I thought there'd be more Red Gwen than this. I really thought Swain was going to show up more, and this is something that I'm kind of kicking myself over, is in the Tournament Tactician as well as in the sort of Friday wrap-up that I did, I was really dogging on Swain. I was talking about how I didn't like this deck, I didn't like either of these builds, Twisted Fate or Nora. but I still thought it was going to be very popular. And I think someone had mentioned that TF Swain was the highest play rate deck in the Swiss portions. So it's not like people didn't bring it. It's just, again, there's not a lot of randoms in Top Cut. And the good players just really weren't that big on Swain in the Americas. And I probably should have dogged this deck a little bit more and stuck to my guns on that, and gone against the stats and really just doubled down on the fact that I didn't think this was a good deck. But when I've done that in the past, it hasn't really worked out for me. People just play it anyway, and like maybe it'll have a meteoric fall off from Swiss into Top Cut, but I just didn't really think that this deck was doing what you needed it to do through the Swiss portions. And, I was right on that, but I feel like I should have doubled down and dogged on it even harder than I did. Sivir Akshan, it was on the radar. I never would have guessed it was a top 5 deck for the seasonal. Never would have guessed that, mostly because I expected, again, a higher presence of Swain decks, maybe even some more Akshan Pantheon. The control decks that I was kind of hyping up, just absolutely nowhere to be seen. Only one Spooky Karma and one Heimer Jace. The meta was just a lot more homogenized than I was really giving it credit for. And the stats support a more homogenized meta. Maybe it is just a top player thing. Maybe it's not. I got to dig a little bit more to try to figure out how I was so off base on Spooky Karma and Heimer Jace. And even going into Top Cut, it's not like the play rate of these rose. It's not like we were, we're just waiting for Top Cut for all the Demacia, and then we're going to bring out the Shadow Owl control to hose them. Absolutely not what happened. That's what Yasuo's job was, apparently. What else did I say? Those are sort of the main ones. Not able to identify exactly how weak control was. The split on the Akshan Nami, or the Akshan Lee Sin and the Nami, I was never going to be able to guess and articulate in any impactful manner. But yeah, this is just kind of, if you wanted a place to find the deck lists, here they are. But yeah, a link to a sheet similar to this will be in the description below in case you want to click through the decks and things like that, run your own stats on it, maybe break down. Only 3 players swapped their entire lineup, and it was P-Tash, who lost to Floppy Mudkip, who won the tournament, and then Mo, who lost in top 8. So, pretty good for the players that decided to go full counter pick and just swap their entire lineup. Definitely a lot more people sticking to their lineup that they used in Swiss, more so than I think a lot of players expected. A lot of, like, Monty on the broadcast was talking a lot about, like, a huge meta shift coming into top 32, and it just didn't really happen. Fiora Pantheon dropped off, and Yasuo rose up to pick up the slack, and outside of that, there wasn't a whole lot of swapping around. Annie Jin definitely picked up, maybe not as much as players expected. We got one more Victor Karma in here. The fact that Barma, or Victor Karma, or whatever you want to call it, was actually like numbers 6 and 7 here, absolutely wild to me. Alongside the Yasuo Katarina, this was a rough one to try and predict, mostly just because we knew the big 3, but I didn't think as many players were going to bring the big 3 just because they tend not to. But yeah, that's something I'll be a little more cognizant of going forward. Double down on things that I don't like a little bit harder than I have in the past. Maybe figure out what happened here and just clean it up for next time. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for watching all of my tournament tacticians and random talks leading into the seasonal. I didn't get as much right as I was hoping for, but we live and we learn, and hopefully I can do better next time.